It's so hard to believe that a year ago, Mel and I launched that first episode of The Human Factor. We were so excited, but we were also listening back. We were such podcast babies.
And over the last year, we've interviewed 14 change makers working in so many different areas of social change.
We've learned really big lessons along the way, like how long it takes to actually record a podcast.
Or how to come up with questions on the fly.
Or how to turn on a microphone if you're Mel.
Or the feeling that you didn't save an interview.
Yeah, we were a bit paranoid for a while there. We've also spent a little bit of time just fangirling over the amazing guests that we've had on the podcast. Like that time that we interviewed the anti-binge drinking and health promotion hero, Chris Rain. If you could leave everyone who's listening today with a few words that they'll really take to heart, what would that be? And that can be anything you like.
A few things. I think one is get really good mentors, and we're lucky as this movement of social entrepreneurship and social enterprise and social impact has grown. We're kind of looking at market-based solutions to social problems. There is a lot of very experienced, very good-hearted business people that didn't get that same opportunity to apply their skills to a social issue. And you can turn them into mentors in the best possible way, and they can open doors for you in ways that I've been helped immeasurably.
But we've spent most of our time being inspired. The amount of times I turned to Erin in an interview and just felt like, wow.
Yeah. Every guest has taught us something about a certain issue, as well as what it's like to just be working in the social change space.
Today, we want to share some of that inspiration with you. And for those days when you're feeling down or just feeling exhausted with the world problem.
And this episode is filled with the inspiration and top tips that we've taken away from the people who know how to make social change happen.
Welcome to The Human Factor, the show where we explore social change through the eyes of social entrepreneurs and nonprofit leaders. My name is Melanie Roussin, her name is Erin McCabe, and we are your hosts.
Today, we're talking to, everyone. That's right. You'll hear from all 14 of our past guests as we take you through their words of wisdom and top tips for making social change happen. We're also sharing our favourite parts of the podcast from our first year on the air.
Let's start the show.
Tip 1. No man is an island.
One of the biggest lessons we've heard from our guests was the need to surround yourself with people who believe in you.
We so often hear the stories of the lonely entrepreneur who's working in an isolated room. He's not got no friends or family because he's just so dedicated to the cause. He's working to make change. But actually, the lessons that we heard from all of our guests is that to make social change happen, no one can operate in a silo. In fact, we did a whole series on collaboration exploring the idea.
And when we talked to Chris Rain in episode 9, he's the founder of the movement Hello Sunday Morning, we talk about the need to find good mentors and harnessing what can be learned from the business community.
But you have to ask, and you just send them email, say, can I catch up for a coffee, or can I do something with you? This is what I want to do. This is how I'm doing it, and I'd love your wisdom. And it's just an enormous wealth of knowledge there. So that has been one of the best things I think that I've ever done in my career as a social entrepreneur. And then the second, there's three things. The second thing I think is a lot of finding partners. Behind every kind of really good organization, there's a bad person that, and I mean that in an endearing way, like there's someone that's really disciplined, very kind of hard nosed, and very numbers driven. That can, you kind of need that. And if you have a really, I think I've become more like that, but it's not a natural skill set. But my business partner is like that, and together we can achieve really good things. So I think you need that duality to work really well and do great things. And I'm always saying yes to things, and he's always saying no, and together we get a really good outcome.
Chris also made a really good point in that episode about the need to just ask as well. And I actually took that to heart, especially when we are approaching guests for the podcast. It was a lesson that really stuck with me. But in episode 1, Emil Kaneda, the founder of UQ Shag, he spoke about it as well. He spoke about how if he didn't have people in his lives who agreed with him that there needed to be change in sexual health and allowing every person to talk freely about sexual health, no matter what religion or race or creed, he never, ever would have made the action group happen.
And when we talked to Adam Miller, who's the co-founder of Planet Indonesia, that was back in episode 5, he talks about the need to be part of the community. So if you are going to implement social change in a country that's not your own, spend time in that community. That's exactly what Adam did. He actually volunteered in Indonesia before he put his social enterprise there together.
Absolutely. And I think that is because if you come into a community that you are not native to, it's a very old school colonial way of looking at development. Tip 2, those who tell stories change the world.
Without the story, there would be no social change.
Yeah, and surprisingly, it was in episode 6 when we spoke to Mara Bun, a climate change activist, that we heard about the power of stories. Climate change, it's such a fact-heavy, science-driven cause, but she talked about how stories are like a social glue.
And it's a social glue that can help you to rally supporters, right, for your cause. And for me, I used to believe in the power of facts, right? And because the fact talk to the head, when you tell story, you kind of make that emotional connection with people. People can relate to what you're saying. But it's something that I've personally discovered very recently, the power of stories.
Yeah, the stories actually talk to the heart rather than the head. And it was when we were speaking to Shana DeLacy from episode 12. She's one of the founders of the social enterprise Fabric Social. She talked about how they're actually trying to break down the fast fashion that goes on in the world by actually telling the stories of the people who actually make their clothes with the people who are buying them. And that's something that is missing from the fashion industry. It's so easy to go into Kmart and buy a $3 shirt because you have no idea who actually made it, whereas they are changing that by telling the stories behind their clothes.
I love that. And do you remember even when we went to do our International Women's Day episode?
One of my faves.
That was episode 8. And we talked to a few change makers there, but one message that really resonated with us came from Moms from Refugee Sally Dodd.
Yeah, Sally actually spoke about not just about telling stories, but telling them to the people who actually need to hear them rather than those that just want to hear them. And that goes against the power of like actually forcing your story to the people who maybe don't want to hear it.
We've all been guilty of that. We've all been guilty of staying in our little comfort zone and basically preaching to the converted.
What our main focus is on this year is trying to raise awareness outside of the bubble. So it's pointless converting, preaching to the converted. And we need to really get outside our own little bubbles, and we all think that we live in these wide worlds, and we don't. We all live in these tiny bubbles. Some are bigger than others. And so we want to engage in as many activities as possible to reach people who haven't made up their mind on this issue, or people who aren't aware of it. And, quite often you'll speak to someone and they won't know what Manus Island is. And you think, goodness me, you don't listen to the news. That's where the Australian government is imprisoning people illegally who were fleeing torture, war and persecution and have asked for our help and protection. And we put them in a jail on Manus Island and Nauru, where they're still suffering after almost 4 years. But some people don't even know that. So our being bold is to try and get out to our non-usual suspects. Yeah. So trying to get out to market stalls and shopping centres in electorates where, that aren't West End.
Yeah.
Get outside of the bubble and stop talking to within the echo chamber, because it doesn't help anyone. It's good for energising ourselves, but it doesn't make any change. Yeah.
Tip 3, when passion is not enough.
How likely I am not to starve at this.
Those were the words of Adriana Tan, founder of the social enterprise Wobe in Indonesia. And we spoke to her in episode 2, and she talked to us about how passion can actually only take you so far.
If you are involved in a social cause, nobody will question your passion. But what Adriana mentioned is that the passion on its own is not enough. It has to be crossed with your resources.
It's one of those things that's only obvious once it's obvious. Once she said it, we're like, oh, duh. But before that, you just didn't even think about it.
In fact, one of our upcoming guests in season 2 will be talking about that.
Hashtag plug. She's actually really passionate about young people, helping young people find jobs, but she's doing it in an industry that she's actually got 10 years experience in.
And if we go back to episode 3, when we talked to Lucas Patchett from Orange Sky Laundry, we talk about how passion often leads to ideas. So you hear these social entrepreneurs or social change maker having lots of ideas, but ideas by themselves, they're not enough. You need concept.
Yeah, it's actually the concepts that sell, not an idea. When you go to a sponsor or some funders, they don't want just an idea. They actually want a rounded out concept. So like the guys from Orange Sky Laundry, you need to actually test your idea and turn it into a concept. For them, it was shoving a washing machine and a dryer in the back of a van and going out onto the streets.
The biggest thing Nick and I talk about is really not ideas, it's concepts. So everyone can have awesome ideas and talk about them all day long, but really turning those ideas into concepts is where that power can happen, and where that story really becomes more powerful. Is that we didn't go out to people asking for money saying, we want to put a van on the road that's got 2 washing machines, 2 dryers, and wash people's clothes for free. We really said, let's make it happen. And then we say, look how well our Orange Sky Laundry van is going here in Brisbane. We're helping this many people a week, having this many hours of conversation, doing this many kilos of laundry. Let's put another van on the road. So really using not ideas but concepts to deliver stories and really selling it on that, but also knowing that really simple ideas can have a huge impact. For Nick and I, washing machines have been around forever. Vans have been around forever. We were just the 2 idiots who chucked them together and sort of made it happen. And but we realised very quickly that it can have a massive impact. And every week now, just under 6 tons of free laundry around Australia and 1,200 hours of really positive and genuine chats every single week. We know it's having a huge impact.
Tip 4, don't be afraid of your emotions.
I think about, the really, really tough times. I think about the success, and I think I've actually never doubted that we could do it, even though I've had moments where I've hysterically cried behind the steering wheel, driving at a ridiculous rate along a highway. Yet get out of my way if you see me like that, because, a meeting didn't go right or we failed. I think what is it that really kept me going? What is it that made me bounce back, keep me focused and just so driven? And for me, it's just really connecting with purpose. And so my message to people out there who, are struggling, or people out there who really want to create change, you want to live a life of meaning and make a difference, but you're not really sure where to start. I guess the words that I'd leave with you is really try and connect with your purpose. And if you need some help or tips, on how to find your purpose, if it's, hiding in the shadows somewhere, would be keep track of your emotions, because often in your emotions you can find clues of where your purpose may lie. For me, I notice that whenever I'm really, really, really angry, that's where my purpose is generally hidden. So I know that I used to be really afraid of the rage I'd feel, but actually I know that it's an indication that something's not right, that I'm dissatisfied. And for me, that's where my purpose lies. I started Project Rocket all those years ago because I was angry that bullying was robbing young people of their potential. And for me, it's been a huge motivator for these last years. If you're not the kind of person that's a ragey person, perhaps it can be found in your values. So the things that you stand for, perhaps your purpose is hidden in there. Or finally, perhaps you're the kind of person that, might not necessarily feel rage, but instead might feel love. So have a think about the times where you feel like you just light up inside, or you're filled with butterflies or filled with excitement. Perhaps your purpose can be found in there. Find out what your purpose is, grab onto it, hold onto it dear life, and just harness it and let it drive you forward. That would be my hot tip of the week.
So in my house growing up, we were told not to acknowledge our emotions. It was quite an emotion-free household.
My house was quite different.
So for me, it was really refreshing to hear Rosie say that your emotions are not a bad thing. In fact, they can be harnessed and help guide you to find your cause, including when that emotion is your fear of failure.
If we go back to episode 10 with Margaret Quipsley, she talks about the fear of not knowing what comes next. Because the reality of social entrepreneur is they may also be having a part-time or full-time job. So to balance this with their social cause can be quite an art and a science.
Absolutely. Another interview that sticks out about fears and emotions is our interview with Ros Campbell, the founder of Suno, in episode 7. She talked a lot about her vulnerability that she felt while putting herself and her reputation on the line when she started Suno. It was actually one of our most candid interviews, and Ros also spoke about the fatigue that she felt from being in so many interviews lately where the media seemed to be searching to glorify a social enterprise and make it out to be something a lot more glittery than the reality is.
Because the reality is that running a social enterprise is hard.
Tip 5, make it happen. Speaking of the fear of failure, how many times has the fear of failure stopped you from doing something?
Or how many times your quest for perfection has stopped you from doing something. We all make excuses like it's not the right time or I'm too busy. But as they say, if you want something done, give it to a busy person.
Like our guest Sandra Capone, co-founder of Good On You from our latest episode, life can sometimes just get in the way.
At about this time last year, I was still working in my old role in the corporate sector and feeling a little bit, I guess, lost or just unsure of where I wanted to head next. I knew I was up for the next challenge, and I knew that I had a passion for sustainability and social justice, but I didn't know exactly what that meant for me in terms of my kind of career direction. And I thought about starting something myself and was also, researching organisations that I thought were doing something that aligned to my passions and my interests. And then I heard about Good On You and met Gordon, the original founder, who had already been, working with the idea of education and the fact that a growing number of people were wanting to make more ethical choices for some time. And something just clicked in me immediately. I knew this was something that I wanted to be a part of.
From our first guest to our last guest, the message has always been the same.
And we could not have been putting it better than Jordan the Board from Boomerang Bags on episode 13. Just give it a go.
The goodie bag. Goodness gracious me, it's time for the goodie bag. And for this week's goodie bag, we're doing something a little bit special. We're putting our favourite parts of the Human Factor podcast season 1 into the goodie bag. So Mel, what are you putting in the goodie bag?
I'm going back to episode 5 with Adam from Planet Indonesia. He really surprised me with this quote.
The reasonable person adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable.
That surprised me coming from Adam because he talks about collaboration and how he worked with the local people. And then suddenly he talks about being unreasonable. And he talks about the fact that, people will say that your ideas is crazy. But usually the more people say it's crazy, the better your idea is. So be crazy. That's how progress is made. You have to go out there and don't be afraid to challenge the status quo and be unreasonable sometimes. That's really what resonated with me. And Erin, what are you putting in the goodie bag?
So I'm going to be putting in Lauren Shuttleworth from episode 4 from the social enterprise Words with Heart. Well, I'm feeling very, very inspired after our chat with Lauren because I've been a fan of her for a really long time. I've actually been following her on Facebook and Instagram for, I think like a year or so now. And the stuff that she posts is really beautiful content that sort of make the idea of gender equality and being a feminist not so scary and yucky, because sometimes in modern media, the word like feminism can have really like scary and gross undertones. But the stuff that she posts is so genuine and so beautiful. It really gets to what the heart of gender equality is all about. Lauren actually really inspired me to be comfortable with the word feminist. I've always considered myself a feminist, but it wasn't until after her episode that I felt comfortable to, come out as a feminist. Her beautiful messaging through her social enterprise Words with Heart made me feel comfortable with why I think that being a feminist is so important. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of The Human Factor. If you enjoyed it, please head to iTunes, hit subscribe, and don't forget to rate us. Then head over to our Facebook page, The Human Factor. Hit like and join in the conversation. Tell us what you thought about today's episode as we reflected back on our favourite parts of the podcast. Then share what's been your favourite episode of The Human Factor Season 1.
Or you can tweet us at _Human Factor. Or visit the website humanfactor.com.au and you can leave us a voicemail or a message. This show is just one part of a community that wants to affect and grow social change. So if you have a topic or a person that you'd like us to feature in Season 2, please let us know.
You're all awesome, and we'll see you next time. Was that all right? Like, that's just...
I think it's perfect. I think we just cut it down and we call this one a day. We've done it.